Good. Well, welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm not sure. I think there are some newcomers today. I'm not absolutely sure. This is a flexible audience, so maybe we can just do some quick introductions. Ben, would you kick off?
Yeah, of course. My connection's a bit dodgy, so apologies if I start freezing. My name's Ben. I'm the Learning and Engagement Officer for the Environment Hub based at Gresson Hall Farm and Workhouse, where we do a range of museums-style learning programs for schools. We also run events, and we are trying to turn the hub into a physical hub as well for various agencies and organisations involved within the environment. I think that's probably
that's the gist.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you.
end of the yeah, that's the gist. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Alice.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Alice, and I work for Wild East, and I'm the director of the schools programme, which is all about connecting children with nature across the East Anglia region.
Lovely, thank you. Claire.
Good morning, everyone. Claire Dyke, social prescribing lead for the integrated care system. So that's all partnerships across Norfolk and Waveney and all ages.
Good. And if I forget, Claire, if it's possible, we could have a quick word at the end of the meeting about something else that came up at our annual meeting last week, which I think is of interest.
Thank you.
A separate chat. Yeah, thank you. Emma.
Morning, I'm Emma Shepherd, and I'm a Community Focus Officer with Children's Services Early Help for North Norfolk.
Lovely, thank you. Isabel?
Hi everyone, I'm Isabel. I'm the Senior Education Officer at the Norfolk Wildlife Trust. And in the education team, we do, it's all about, again, connecting children and families to nature with the aim to help them discover, explore and take action for nature. So we do this through sessions with schools, both in their school grounds and on our nature reserves. We do family activities on our nature reserves. We attend events and run events and take part in a lot of nature-related projects with an engagement angle. Thank
you. And has Natalie had a chat with you by any chance?
No, I haven't seen Natalie in a little while, so
okay. Well,
catch up with her this week.
I'll pick that up when we get to appropriate point in the agenda. That's fine.
Okay.
So you wanted to say something about Wilder Schools, which I think you might know about.
Yes.
Yes.
A little. I mean, we haven't had a chance to discuss that yet with it being so busy, but yeah.
Fair enough, but I won't put you on the spot. Not too much anyway. Paola, over to you.
Yes, hi. I'm Paola Colombo. I work for Norfolk and Waveney Mind in different roles, but particularly I'm here because one of our nature-based projects is called Sustain, deals with climate anxiety, and we work with young people at UEA. And most recently, we have launched a co-produced Active Hope, Mindfulness and Active Hope project, which is being led by people that we trained, the students that we trained at UEA. And that has had quite a bit of press at the moment. So we're quite pleased with that. And yeah, that's the project is finishing in quite soon, actually, in February, but we are in the process of looking for more funding, and we're here because if anybody else is interested in hearing about it and maybe, I don't know, commissioning it, that would be great.
Thank you. I mean, again, as we'll touch on later, I mean, there's this Climate Action Fund application that we're looking at the moment, and it could well be that we could include something along those lines in that bid, Paola, but we can talk a bit more about that later. Thank you. Jenny? Welcome, Jenny. I haven't seen you before, I don't think.
Hi, sorry, my internet connection is not great, so I hope you can hear me. I have two roles, one for the RSPB at Strumpshire Fen, working with school groups. And obviously we have family visitors and family activities and things too. Also for the Marine Conservation Society along the coast, working with school groups up there as well.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Louise.
Hello, my internet is playing up a bit today. I've managed to connect on my phone, but it's in and out, so apologies if you lose me. But yeah, I'm Louise from the Greenlight Trust, and we have We work with adults, predominantly has been adults in Norfolk, but just moving now into working with primary and secondary school children at our sites at Strumpshaw Fen, Blickling Hall and Oxborough Hall. And we run courses for well-being and to help with mental health in a woodland setting, similar to Forest School, loosely based around that sort of style.
Thank you, Louise. Nice to see you. Well, nearly see you anyway. I apologise in advance. I've got a bit of a cough at the moment, so I may well dip out for obvious reasons. So I'll keep speaking as far as I can. Yeah. So today, I think you may hopefully got an email from me, sort of summarising the points of the last meeting and also suggesting an agenda for today. And I think in general terms, it's really just a case of taking stock of progress since we last met, and well, ensuring that we're keeping on track and thinking about what we need to do in the next month or two, if that's all right. There've been a few developments which obviously we can pick up on, which I think is encouraging. We're in that, I suppose, fair to say, that sort of development phase for what we're doing. We've agreed our sort of overall aim and objectives, and we've got priorities of communicating and involving young people, children, and obviously existing providers of nature connection opportunities. We've been doing the mapping exercise, which we'll come on to later. So without further ado, if we can move on to involvement and communications. Unfortunately, neither Sam or Amy are with us this morning. Tim, welcome. Hello. Do you want to just introduce yourself, Tim?
Sorry, I'm just coming to terms with life. You asked me to introduce myself. Nigel?
Say again.
Are you asking me to introduce myself?
Yes, please. You've arrived just as everyone else has introduced themselves. So
I'm sorry I'm late, but it's just a lot going on. I've been away for a long time and a lot is going on. Tim O'Riordan used to be a University of East Anglia, President of the CPRE Norfolk, President of the Association of Local Councils in Norfolk, active involvement with First Nature and with all the things that Nigel does, and really working very hard about a better future for Norfolk, despite what's going on in COP27 and all other aspects of the world. We have to do better in Norfolk, and that's what we'll do, and I'm going to be part of that. That's
absolutely.
That's my
keep optimistic. Thank you, Tim. Nice to see you. Yeah, we're just about to hit the agenda, really. I'm saying that unfortunately Sam or Amy, neither are with us today, but just to recap, I think they had success in connecting with the youth advisory boards, as they're called, across the county, who were all, I think, enthusiastic about taking part in something to do with First Nature, although it might be from different angles. I don't know, did you want to comment at all, Emma, from your standpoint on sort of involvement?
Yeah, I'm involved with the North Youth YAB group, and I know that they did, when they were doing their planning over the summer, they did highlight that they wanted to do some environmental work. I have actually spoken to Emma Price about this group a couple of times, and she was quite interested. I'm just wondering if that would be, because they're in different localities, so I don't know if you actually want somebody from the actual YABs to attend.
Well, that's one option. I wonder what people feel. I think we've got to get to a point where we actually start to involve children and young people directly, as we've said in the past. As you may recall, we had Owen along from the MAP project at our last meeting, and he's involved with the sort of a youth action program there, but that's just a step in the right direction. And I believe I'm right in saying, Emma, that there are commissioners, or what are they called? Representatives, if you like, of the YABs that have a more sort of proactive role. Is that right?
Absolutely. Well, the young people are involved in saying how they spend the money, because the YABs get an amount of money every year, and then they say how they want to spend it and what they want to do in their areas. And I know that the North specifically were looking about waste management, and they had an idea of putting together themed bins, like the dinosaur trail, but doing having some bins in North Norfolk that were on, that were different, so you could go and visit all of the bins.
Right.
I know that I think Broadland as well. I think most of the different YABs have got their own agendas because they work them up with the young people that are actually in the groups. But I know that environment was pretty much on all the different YAB agendas, though I
Yeah.
only work with the North one.
How many are there in total?
What on the
How many YABs are
advisory-
there?
I think they mirror our localities, so I think 6 or 7 maybe in
Right.
Norfolk.
I'm just wondering whether, I don't know what other people feel, whether it would be advisable as a next stage to perhaps invite a representative from each of those groups to join us and, you know, take stock of where we're at and have their sort of input to it. Because I'm keen to get that involvement. What do people feel?
Yeah.
Hands up if you like to speak. I think is the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Nigel, what is there any kind of summary of what primary schools are doing in Norfolk around children access to nature? I mean, it's a silly question to ask at one level, but it's not at another. But a lot of primary schools doing some interesting things. I'm wondering whether we could have any kind of mechanism through the county or whatever to find out what are the best practices in primary schools. I mean, in CPRE, we give awards to schools, particularly primary schools, for getting youngsters out into the natural world, and above all, to create natural areas.
Yeah.
Give them about 3 awards a year on this, and there's many others who apply for an award. So there's what you might call momentum out there. But I think what Emma is saying is that if we can get a little bit of that, we can start a planning process, which might be quite useful for what I would like to do as CPRE, and indeed all of us on the screen would like to do. Move things forward, look at best practice and see what can be done.
Yeah.
I know there are great difficulties, but nevertheless, best practice of what people are doing, which makes things happy and getting children to respond. It must make a big difference to the way schools function. We know that. It's a really
I think 2 answers on that, Tim. One is, and we'll talk about it in a minute, there is this sort of mapping exercise going on where we're trying to gather information on what opportunities already exist, which I think touches on really what you're looking for at the primary school level. I've also had separately contact from a woman called Kirsty Savage, who has been on our sort of contact list, but for various reasons hasn't ever managed to make a meeting. But she is involved with an organisation called Educate Norfolk, which some of you may know of, which I think is basically a representative group of head teachers across the county. And she's quite keen, I think, to use that as a way of connecting with schools. I think it might be primary as well as secondary. I don't know, I absolutely know. Is it Emma may know? I don't know. Do you want to come in? Is that?
Well, no, I'm aware of them in sort of dispatches, if you like. If you like.
Right.
I'm just trying to think on my feet here, because I go into schools and do a surgery with my PFO counterpart, which is, and we work on help. Sorry, I'm in the wrong mindset. We work in early help, so we go into the schools and see what the issues are with families and young people. But there is an element of me going in as a community focus officer to say what's available in the area.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, as a start off, I could ask the schools. I'm going for a surgery this afternoon. I might start asking them what if they have an agenda at all. I know that I know some of them do, and I know some of the secondary schools. So I could start sort of doing a little pilot and finding out what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Yeah, that would be brilliant. And maybe your colleagues in terms of other areas, you know, perhaps you have a first toe in the water, and perhaps pick up the idea as well, and we could get that more comprehensive picture that maybe what Tim is looking for, and you know, not all just what's out there, but also, as he says, any examples of successful projects, you know, good practice and so on.
I'm very interested in his awards, because I think that would be a sort of an incentive and a sort of a targeted goal. If I'd find out a little bit more about that, and then I can kind of use that as a as an incentive. I know
Yeah.
that I know there are a lot of, we recently did some information events in the libraries up in North Norfolk, and we did have quite a lot of feedback. We are working with a forest school in Sculthorpe, and obviously there's one in Holt, but there was a general interest from the parents that we spoke to. This is 0 to 5 area, and they are interested in more forest type schools and outdoor activities.
Yeah.
So, like formulating something for that would be a an opportunity as well.
Yeah. Okay, Tim.
Well, CPRE, Emma, just to help you, CPRE Norfolk run every 2 years an award system in which there are 4 categories, but the category that you're interested in is around education and nature, and particularly for primary schools, but we also look at secondary schools. What we do is we always give 3 or 4 awards every 2 years. They get a lot of recognition. It means that I, as president, go to the schools to have a look at what they're doing, and I have to say, I'm amazingly impressed and encouraged that these youngsters, they're not learning nature, they're learning about life. It's education. They know about birds, they know about numbers, and they know about relationships with people and with nature. It's a really important activity for young people, and they're so enthusiastic when you go and talk to them. And they're proud of what they're doing. So we give them an award, and we would like to have a situation where we can get as many as possible being recommended for award, and we put that up as it's only CPRE, but it's nevertheless very much part of the county, and it goes to schools with a good track record. And it's very much part of what we're trying to do here. I realize it's a very small, we do 2 or 3 and there are dozens and dozens of schools, but a lot of schools are now beginning to realize this is something they should be doing as part of their general curriculum. The point I'm making to all of you, and I know you know this, is this is not just about first nature. This is about good education and good companionship and how to learn with each other and be responsible for each other for an outcome that the school is proud of. That's, to me, the best you can do in a school with anyone up to 11 years old. So I find all of this very heartening if we can get it to happen.
Right. So just coming back then to what you're suggesting, Emma, if it's possible for you to sort of dip your toe in the water with your
I can do
own surgeries and maybe test out an approach and see what there is. And I mean, you can feed that back perhaps to our next meeting, and we can see whether we spread that perhaps more generally with your colleagues. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that sounds like a direction
back
to go
to the
in.
YABs though, people's views on inviting a representative, I suppose, is what I'm suggesting, to our next meeting, or are there other ways of doing this? Maybe we have a separate meeting with them.
Very quickly, I don't want to dominate this discussion, but very quickly, we're having a meeting of the CPR executive next week. And on our agenda is how we're going to handle Norfolk in the future. And part of that discussion is going to be what Emma is talking about now. So what Emma, I'd like is I have a look at all of your contact details. And when you've done your homework and your side of things, and I've done my homework and my side of things, I think we should have a chat to see how we can take this forward, because there's a lot of goodwill around, but we need to have a support on both sides. And you're clearly a very important person in terms of this activity. So Nigel, it's an excellent call. Already in the first 10 minutes, things are, from my point of view, happening very successfully. So Emma, you and I will be in touch with you when we have this discussion.
I see Claire has raised a point in the chat. Claire, did you want to put that point to Tim?
Yeah, well, you're in the chat.
Well, no, just Claire to talk to it really, so it's on the recording as well.
Okay, right. Okay, I'll do that while we're talking.
Thanks,
Claire,
Nigel. Yeah, Tim, you just the CPRE award sounds fantastic and a great initiative for Norfolk. I'm guessing Norfolk, not Waveney. You mentioned it's for those already doing good things, but in my mind, surely it should be targeted around those schools and areas where they're struggling, or there is children living within a deprived area who potentially don't have the same accesses of as those who are already doing good things and are on the right trajectories of pathways for.
So maybe sort of awards for progress. Is that the sort of line that you're thinking?
Yeah. I've not heard of it before, so I'm very interested to learn more. So which perhaps isn't for this meeting, but
yeah, maybe something we can pursue outside again, Tim. Unless you want to
Well,
come
you're
on.
making a very valid point. The woman who's running all this is our administrator, Alice Francis. She'll be at this meeting. We need to get, can't just, it's on the website for CPRE Norfolk. You'll see it there under the award scheme, and you'll see the 4 categories. But I think we need now to use something like this First Nation network, Nigel. So CPRE, because we're literally, the timing is ideal because the next awards will be in November next year. So people need a bit of lead time for that, and the awards will be judged sometime around late summer next year. So it's good timing to get something out to all of you, and this is what I will guarantee will happen from our meeting next week.
Yeah, well, great suggestion. So maybe we put in terms of action, really exploring the potential for CPRE awards in the coming year to encourage involvement, encourage progress, those sorts of things. So let's mark that up, and perhaps you can have some further thoughts, Tim, and discussions with people today separately, and bring that back next
And you
month.
and I can have an off-track discussion, Nigel.
Sure.
But I will get the machinery in motion. I can guarantee this week. So when we're meeting next week, there'll be action.
Yeah. Okay. Bring you back to my other point again. Getting the YABs involved. What do people feel? What's sensible? What's practical? Claire's got a thumbs up. Anyone else? Any views, really? Do you think it would work to get them, at least in principle, along to an online meeting? We don't want to. I suppose what I'm thinking of, we don't want to overpower them, if you like, with all the powerful presences that there are on this call. But what's your view, Emma, having worked with them and knowing them?
The young people, they're obviously being lessons at this point.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it might be an idea to invite, if we invite Emma Price, who is my contact in the YABs, and see if she could come to a meeting, and then she could feed it back initially.
Okay, that's a step in the right direction. Yeah,
I'm just thinking that would, be probably, rather than that might be difficult getting children out of lessons.
would she be in? I mean, is she a youngster as well? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Oh no, she works. She's MAP.
Okay,
she runs that.
Yeah. She's working alongside Owen, I think, isn't she? So maybe we try and get them both along to the next meeting and get them plugged into ways of directly engaging the youngsters. Yeah. Claire.
Sorry, I couldn't take my camera off mute then. My mic even. I wonder if it would be perhaps in the future be great to have a couple of them presenting to this group.
Yeah.
With the approval of the school, obviously, but I think that would be a nice idea, because they can see that the wider system is supporting them and advocating for them, and they can also put their thoughts through to us. Because
I suppose the obvious one is the sort of the items in the YAB plans that have been referred to that we've touched on. So maybe we could get them to come along and talk through what their priorities are, what their interests are. Good thought.
Yeah.
Leave that with you, Emma, if that's all right, in terms of the next step, and maybe get Emma and Owen along to our next meeting just to talk that through in principle. Anything else on involvement? Anyone wants to pick up on? We'll move on to comms more generally, if not. Thank you for that. I see Dan has joined us. Which Dan are we talking about? Because it's not clear from my screen who you are, Dan. Which Dan are you? Make yourself known.
Hello,
Dan Sowitz. Hello.
Hey, sorry.
Right.
I joined a bit late after a meeting overran.
Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Dan?
Yes, so my name's Daniel Salis. I work for a housing association called Flagship Group. So we sort of cover Norfolk, Suffolk, and parts of Essex as well. So my job title is ecology champion. So we're kind of recognizing that we've got quite a lot of land that is mown 16 times a year, and we kind of want to do something a bit better with it. We've also got sort of outreach opportunities to tenants and customers and things like that around sort of ecology and biodiversity.
Thank you, Dan. And we're talking about backyard nature in a moment, which I think is one of the things that we've had some discussions about, isn't it? Getting youngsters involved in sort of environmental action at a local level, really. And am I right in saying congratulations are in order?
Yes, yeah, 2 weeks into a newborn, so
Well done. Congratulations. That's great
yeah.
news.
Thank you
Okay,
very
well, let's
much.
move on. Comms. Alice, you've had some discussions, I know, with Kerry from Public Health, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. I think
Yeah.
it's a house move or something. Could you just talk through where you've got to with logos and comms strategy and stuff like that?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we've had a productive week, and basically Kerry kickstarted things with writing a kind of an overall strategic brief that basically encapsulates everything that we've discussed so far with regards to First Nature, what it's about, what its main focus is, objectives, all that sort of thing. So I guess, you know, for people who aren't kind of used to going down this route, it's just really good that when we're creating something together, we've got all our kind of minds around the one page and we're all on the same page with regards to what we're trying to do, who benefits, all that sort of thing. So that sort of initial thinking was the beginning steps in developing First Nature as a brand. So that's the thinking bit of the brand. Obviously, there is the visual bit of the brand, which is the First Nature logo, which I've picked up on and written a brief for Kerry, who potentially can get some resources from a design point of view involved to create a logo that we feel reflects the kind of attributes and goals of First Nature. So we're kind of at early stages there, but things are moving nicely.
Lovely, thank you. Anyone got any questions for Alice? I guess the next stage, Alice, is firming things up. And I think one of the things that Kerry was particularly exploring was the possibility of some funding, particularly for, you know, design work and other aspects of what we might develop as a comm strategy. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I got the impression that there is potentially design resource available from Kerry's side of things. So it's in initial stages and she's putting the request in. So we're just waiting to see what comes back on that. So we'll just have to see what happens there. I think another point to make is that, you know, it's very important that we're all kind of inclusively involved in this process as well. So as soon as we have some, you know, a concrete milestone to share with everyone, which will probably be at a future meeting, we can show you where we've got to and then take any feedback and input from everyone.
Great. I mean, do you think it's realistic to have something a bit firmer for our next meeting in a month's time?
I would imagine a month is feasible, but don't hold me to it. I'll probably update you when I hear back from Kerry during the week.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it. But that's something to aim for, perhaps, if we can. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Anyone else, any points on the communication side? Perhaps I could just mention websites. Claire, you very kindly talked about the ICS website as a possible host for a First Nature page or something like that. And it got me thinking about, I suppose, the Green Care Network's own website as well, where we've sort of hosted a page on community wilding, which is another project that several of us here are involved with. And I just wonder, I mean, I just leave this out for thinking about, I suppose, at this stage, whether what we should aim for, and again, it depends on resources, is a sort of a standalone website, a sort of a base for the campaign, if you like, but have edited or limited information available on a number of other websites, including perhaps your own and the networks that point to that. So people might access it from a number of different routes, I think. I don't know what your thoughts are about that. Do you think that would work?
Yeah, it sounds like we should be consistent in our kind of in how we communicate things. Yeah. So if we are all independently going to promote traffic towards our main website, I think there's quite an in-depth discussion that's needed to make sure we're communicating exactly the right message in the right way, format, all that sort of stuff. But I think it's definitely something that could be done and probably something that's needed, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, as we've discussed before, website is just one channel, isn't it? I mean, we talked before about opportunities for other ways of communicating, whether social media, events, and whatever, which I think, you know, we can start to firm up once we've got that broader strategy in place. Claire, did you want to come in at all on what I've just said about the website?
No, sorry, I was just funds up in agreement. I think that's a good idea. It's really easy for these things to become invisible. So the more wayfinding there is available online to bring it to people's attention, I think that's really important.
Fine, thanks. And Claire?
Fully supportive of a website, Nigel. Question on funding, of course, and how that would be funded.
Yeah.
Although I don't think it costs too much, a few £1,000s maybe to set up initially. So it would be the ongoing, making sure it was up to date permanently, of course. But yeah, ICS is, was an integrated care board, absolutely able to support being the host as for now to launch it until we progress further.
Yeah, good. Thank
So
you.
we were good to work with Alice and Kerry to get those comms firmed up.
Yes.
So we can get it out. I've got administrator access to the ICS website, of which I'll pop a link in the chat so you can all see where we're at.
Yeah, good. I had a quick look yesterday. It's getting there, isn't it?
It's improving every week.
Populating. Yeah, good. So Alice, I think in terms of I can't remember what Kerry included in the outline, but does it I suppose, is it broad enough in scope to include the sort of things we've just been talking about, the different channels that we're...
Yeah, and I think it's a very natural point of conversation that we've gotten to with all of this, and these are all the kind of the next steps basically that I would see in the development of the whole thing. So it's, you know, it's first of all, what's the back end strategy? What are we trying to do? Are we all on the same page? Then it's the visual identity in form of the logo. And then off that comes the means of communication, which are websites, social media channels, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's all very natural to be having this conversation at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And thanks for your help on this. It's much appreciated.
No problem.
Let's move on then. Mapping, I think there's a little note that I put in the email for today from Katie, who's been coordinating that, Katie Bristow. And as you'll see, that I think the questions she poses really are, you know, we've made a start. We've started to get these pro formas completed, and thank you to those of you who sent them in. Very interesting material in there. But we need, if you like, I think an effort to ensure a bit more comprehensive coverage. Now, our early discussion in terms of primary school activity has maybe been picked up by Emma in terms of that approach. But I'm just, I suppose, picking up on Katie's points. What do we need to do next? One thing I know that I can do, which might help a little bit, is I could actually send round the pro forma to our members, the members of the network, Green Care Network. Now, obviously, only a few of those will probably be involved directly providing nature connection opportunities for children and young people. The Papillon project is a case in point that comes to mind, but there may be others as well. What are your thoughts on how we sort of get, I suppose, greater coverage? Any thoughts? Stunned silence.
I think performer is a sensible idea, and then we can all cascade that, can't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious thing to do, spread the word really, isn't it? And you know, I think it's fairly clear what we're looking for, and it's fairly brief as well, but it you know, it gives us that picture, which I think Katie in discussion was talking about, you know, February as being a point where we hopefully have enough to draw together and take stock of that and start to sort of analyse it in a way that says, you know, we're obviously a bit weak in this perhaps geographical area or in this type of provision, wherever it might be. So, I mean, Tim, yeah.
There's a wider question, Nigel, which is also why we exist in First Nature, and that is that we're really starving young people with a lot of very important stimuli. There's hardly any musical education now compared with what was 10 years ago. There's not enough contact with nature compared with what there was 10 years ago, for all kinds of reasons which we know about. But the life of a child does require that spiritual, musical, natural investment, and doing so with others, not just on their own. So I'm just wondering whether we can look around charities, or we can talk, as I'm doing with my friends in the parish movement, the other half of my life. And Pete Strange, who is in charge of wellbeing for the parish, is coming after lunch today, and I will talk to him about this. And we're in this business now of trying to deal with the aftermath of the scare stories about taking the natural world out of the planning system and of investment zones and so on. I won't go into all of that because it may or may not happen, but it will happen if we don't fight it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a really important argument about getting the county, it's someone in the county, to realise that every child should have the opportunity to be in the natural world for how little time, doesn't matter, but it's for some time. And every child should have some kind of musical experience, but come what may, because these have high payoffs down the line. And so I'm just wondering whether there are charities, and I will talk to my various friends in the charitable movement, as to whether we can expand this, and particularly in the context of the discussion around new nature recovery and so on. So I'm talking to my friends in the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, talking a lot in the parish movement about this, to see whether we can get the parishes to get young people into the natural world through these schemes. So I'm only saying right now, because I've been away, as you know, for a long time, but I'm now fully back in harness in Norfolk. And my aim now for the next year is to put my effort into this. So I'm going to try and find if we can pursue the idea of widening the experience of every young person in Norfolk around 4 or 5 areas, which in my view are essential for their livelihood.
Yeah.
It's that simple. If we starve people at the age of 5 from the things we're talking about, it is a very serious long-term damage. So these are the issues I think we have to address and get into the open. I'm very happy to do that through my contacts, but the parish movement on where you're studying, where you're resting right now, Nigel, is pushing this issue of new nature. And in that, the young people will be part of the process. And that's not the same as the schools. It's a separate issue. It's a community-based activity, and it's farming.
Yeah,
and I will be reporting to you on that over before next month.
Good. So I guess it's really a case of, I mean, the focus at the moment is mainly on I suppose, taking stock of what's already out there. But equally, that can lead on to what's the potential, which I think is what you're really talking about, particularly as far as parishes are concerned. So I think that connection with Pete would be really helpful. And if there's a way in which Pete could canvass, you know, by using the pro forma, are things already going on at parish level that people are aware of that we need to, you know, note down, but equally ideas about what might be done in the future. Is that something you could pick up with Pete then, Tim?
Leave it with me and I'll bring it back. I mean, you're now getting me, and a minute will come from you, Nigel, will say action, Tim O'Riordan. Leave it with me. I'm taking it to Pete. He's part of your team, as you know, and I'll see what I can do. But there's one thing which is really important. Well-being is now the name of the game. And the nation, we're starting to start thinking differently about these matters compared with where we were even a year ago because of what's going on. And we've just got to address it now and not let it slip away from us. So I will be back to you next month.
Okay, fine. And the other thing I mentioned earlier, which is something I will pick up, I'll have a discussion with Kirsty Savage from Educate Norfolk, which is this head teachers group or association, and see whether, you know, she can provide a channel to reach schools as well in terms of things that are already going on. So it's a combination of, you know, just basically pushing this around, and between us all, I think, getting enough information to have a reasonably good, accurate picture of the world as it exists at the moment in terms of Nature Connection. Great. Moving on, because I'm conscious of time. Resources and development opportunities. Just a brief update from you in terms of Backyard Nature and the Climate Action Fund application that is being worked on. There is a working group that is essentially made up of members of the, I mentioned it earlier, Community Wilding Partnership. And that's had a couple of meetings. And again, a bit like this group, we've started to develop a clear picture of what it is we want to do. We're now at that stage where we need to flesh out how and who's going to do what in terms of that bid. The bid will be, I think, for not a full bid, because I don't think we're at that stage, but a bid for funding to develop a full programme. And the way that the Climate Action Fund is set up, it means you can apply for, I think it's up to £150,000 over 18 months or 12 to 18 months. So I think what we'll be looking at is ways in which we need to and can plug in some of the first nature things that we've been talking about, such as perhaps a backyard nature programme. I know that the Active Funding organisation are very keen to work with us on a Norfolk-wide approach to that approach, which is very much about funding young people at local level to take environmental action, various kinds. And also, and Dan will be aware of this, linking in with housing associations, because again, there is the potential, I think, in, as Dan was referring to earlier, the potential in some housing estates for doing stuff, if you like, to green spaces that have been managed in a particular way, and not a particularly helpful way, both in terms of biodiversity, food security, whatever it might be. So at a very positive meeting with someone from Clarion Housing Association, which I think is the biggest in the country, the other day, and he's very keen to work alongside you, Dan, and other local housing associations to take a sort of a consortium approach to how housing associations can facilitate the sort of environmental action that youngsters and other groups will get involved with. So that's, I think, where we're at with that. The other thing which I think is a very positive development is I had a very positive discussion with Natalie Bailey from Norfolk Wildlife Trust, who is, I think I'm right in saying, Isabel, Director of Engagement at the Wildlife Trust, about their involvement both in First Nature but also in that Climate Action Fund bid. She was very keen to work in a collaborative way. Norfolk Wildlife Trust, as you may know, is part of a national grouping of wildlife trusts that I think has been successful in developing a project which is very similar to sort of the community wilding model that we've been developing locally. And she's keen, if you like, that we avoid duplication, we play to the strengths of organisations, we don't, you know, try and compete, basically. So that was a really positive message. And one thing she did mention, I'll put you on the spot, Isabel, briefly, was a project that I think you've been looking at the Wildlife Trust called Wilder Schools, which I guess is, I think is something that's been running in other parts of the country, but which I think you're looking at running in Norfolk. Are you able to say anything about that? You appear to be on mute, though. Your mute button is off. Can't hear you. No.
She's trying to get.
This is
there we are.
Yeah,
the microphone was a headphone.
Yeah, sure. So to talk about Wilder Schools, so it's really in its inception here at Norfolk Wildlife Trust. We need the time over the winter to sort of think about it and develop it, but it is something that has been running at Surrey Wildlife Trust, and Suffolk Wildlife Trust have just started this year. The idea is to enable schools to see the benefits of nature, wildlife and biodiversity within their school grounds, both in terms of well-being, but also in terms of biodiversity and learning about biodiversity where they are. So it's a lovely approach, and rather than just seeing nature as something that you can see in special places, trying to impart that idea that actually nature is everywhere and needs protecting everywhere, and it's also a really brilliant learning resource for schools. Our plan is to run a pilot of the project from September next year. So, because it will need quite a long lead up time, given that we're working in academic years, and we also need to develop the project itself. And also it is a bit of a change from our traditional approach. So we need time to develop that, but it's very exciting. And the idea really is to enable schools to facilitate them over the course of a 3-year period into becoming not nature experts, but sort of comfortable and confident in making the most of their school grounds, basically, in all aspects. Yeah. Obviously, as has already been mentioned by Tim, lots of schools are already doing loads of stuff currently. So our idea would be to target specific schools, but that needs to be worked out as well. We may look at schools that are already doing lots for nature and wildlife, and we may look at schools that aren't currently doing so much for nature and wildlife. We really want to use the pilot phase so that we are learning as much as possible, so that we can ensure that this project works as well as possible. So that's really, in a nutshell, what our plan is.
Yeah, and I think we haven't got Kate from Wild East here today, but I do know, Alice, as you've mentioned, that obviously Wild East have been developing a schools programme as well. And I believe that there was some discussion between the Wildlife Trust and Wild East. So again, you avoid that overlap and your planes and so on. Is that right?
Yeah, we had a meeting with a colleague of Isabel's, God, about 6 months ago, I'd say. Her name escapes me, but I could look it up. But you know, very much we had our pilot program, which has now just come to an end, and we're actually going live with our launch schools this month. But yeah, I completely agree with Isabel, the need for a really sturdy pilot program testing period, just to make sure you're doing the right thing in the right place. And that's very much what we've been testing and learning from. But you know, again, the reason we had a meeting with Isabel's colleague was to ensure that, you know, we're all communicating with each other and we're not duplicating and standing on each other's toes and all that sort of thing. Thankfully, as we're a small, lean operation, we can just kind of switch something on quite quickly. So that's kind of why we've kind of hit go with everything. But obviously, like, if there is learnings and things like that that we can share along the way, we'd be very happy to kind of collaborate on that front as well.
That would be fantastic, Alice. And yeah, just to make sure we aren't exactly going behind you, sort of with the same schools, that would be brilliant. If we could maybe have a chat, you and me, or
it'd be great. What geographical areas are you covering in the programme or aiming to?
Well, long term, it'd be looking at Norfolk, but the whole of Norfolk really. But we still need to work out even our pilot areas, because obviously we've got lots of different projects going on. So we just want to make sure that we're targeting the right areas for the pilot. So yeah, that's not been defined yet. Natalie and I need to sit down and think about that.
Sorry, just to say that approach of piloting fits really nicely with the Climate Action Fund approach that I mentioned earlier, because again, we've talked in there about target areas, target communities to actually try out, if you like, the community wilding model, which includes, you know, I mentioned my own church earlier, that we've got this lottery funding now where we're using the church as a bit of an anchor organisation in the community to work with local landowners about ways of improving biodiversity. Equally, school grounds can perform that function. Equally, hospital sites can perform that function, because we, as you know, we've been working with the ICS locally on their green plan, and there is a very clear statement in the green plan that they want to take positive action to improve biodiversity, promote health and well-being through using their sites, whether it's a hospital site, a GP premises, an ambulance station, whatever. So there are all these different strands, I think, that come together really nicely in terms of that development programme that hopefully we can pull together for the Climate Action Fund. Anyone, any questions for Isabel on that? Tim?
Climate Action Fund, applying for these, as you know, Nigel, are headaches. Is it your idea that Norfolk Wildlife Trust, or people that you know who've got what I call blooded experience of dealing with CAF can help us? Because putting a bid in CAF is always, I mean, I've been involved with 2 or 3 of these, and they're torturous processes. Even on the smaller scale you're talking about. So I take it that this is what's happening, that Natalie or others in the Wildlife Trust are helping you with the bid. Am I right?
We're not at that stage yet, Jim. I mean, Natalie's been extremely busy because, as Isabel will confirm, I think the Trust has been going through something of a transitional phase with people arriving and going, new posts and all sorts of things. And Natalie's been very, very tied up with a whole range of other things. But we had a very positive phone discussion the other day. She's hoping to make the meeting this Thursday, I think it is, of the working group on the application, and is very keen to get involved. And without putting words into her mouth, I mean, we had a very positive talk about the sort of leading or coordinating role that the Wildlife Trust could play in that, because obviously they are in a pole position, you know, having a Norfolk focus, doing all the things that are already being done. You know, it perhaps makes sense for them to play that sort of role, but I won't speak for Natalie. We need to have a further discussion about that. Anything else on that? If not, I think basically to sum up, I think there are a number of very interesting strands of potential development there coming together, which will benefit children and young people. Alice, just going back to the schools programme that you mentioned, I can't recall did you or did Kate produce one of the pro formas that we've got summarising that? Because if not, I'm wondering if that might be useful.
I have had nothing to do with the pro forma at the moment so far, so I don't know if Kate has.
Right. Would you mind just checking with her? I think it would be helpful, because if you're at that stage, it sounds as though you're fairly advanced now, you're about to kick off. It would be nice to have perhaps a bit more information about that we could share within the group. The pro forma was one way of doing it, but equally, speak about it next time maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll speak to Kate, and then I can pick up with you directly on it to see what we need to do.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on resources and development? If not, it's a question of 5 minutes to go. Any other business?
Sorry, I'm just going to take us back to activities and resources, because I was just about to say something when Isabel was speaking, and then my internet cut out. So hopefully you can all hear me and I'm not glitching.
Go for it, Ben. Go for it.
Just to say that the Environment Hub has been involved with is involved over the coming year with a pilot working with schools, and that's linked with the SOAR Trust at the John Innes Centre and the Food and Farming Discovery Trust. So just really to say it's probably worth having a chat, Isabel, again about how all of these things can complement rather than duplicate, and ours is a very, very small scale project. It's only with a handful of schools that are local to Gresson Hall. But I just wanted to raise that anyway.
Yeah, sure, Ben. Yeah. Shall we pick that up in a separate meeting? That sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Another example of the network working. Excellent. If that's all, then just to try and summarise, I think in terms of action for the next meeting, which is about a month's time, I think we said on the involvement side, Emma, essentially you'd be using your surgeries with primary schools to explore the extent to which there is nature connection happening and perhaps examples of good practice. You'd look perhaps with Tim looking at the CPRE awards, the way those might be developed in the coming year as part of that. We'd look to perhaps invite Emma and Owen to our next meeting. And again, Emma, I think if you could do that, that would be brilliant, to give them an opportunity to talk through, their ideas and perhaps ways in which the YABs and others might get more directly involved. On the comms front, I think Alice and Kerry, you're obviously developing the ideas in more detail, and hopefully we'll have something more specific next time. We touched on websites and other channels, and obviously we can come back to that at an appropriate point. As far as mapping is concerned, I'm going to be sharing the pro forma with the network members and also talking to Kirsty about linking up with schools through the Educate Norfolk group. Anyone on this meeting can obviously use that pro forma and promote its completion and submission. Either come back to Katie Bristow directly or come back to me. And then Tim, you'll be talking to Pete Strange about the parish level involvement at the moment and potential. And then on the resources front, we'll continue to develop the Climate Action Fund proposal and try to weave into that, I guess is what I'm saying, proposals that we've touched on today, like the Wilder Schools one possibly, and also some of the other initiatives that you mentioned around development and so on. Hopefully that's clear. Is there anything else? I see a couple of hands. Claire, were you first? Soon.
I'll be quick, so now we only have 2 minutes. And this is probably more for future meetings, but just as an FYI to you all, I've had some really great conversations with University College London and Norfolk and Suffolk Foundation Trust, which is the mental health aspect of our integrated care system. The UCL, the University College London, want to complete a research trial in Norfolk and Waveney targeted around social prescribing is in the main, but I see this group as part of that future. The research trial is for those children aged 11 to 18 and young people aged 11 to 18 who are on the CAMHS waiting list, so on the children and adolescent mental health waiting list, of which some of those will be within your areas. While they're on this massive waiting list, which is weeks and months long, what can we do to support them with social prescribing and well-being pathways while they're waiting to see a psychologist, as a for instance. And I see this group really linking in with that pathway. And what the University College London want to do is develop, it's a complete research trial, so it's fully funded by the university, and I'm also funding a social prescriber to support it, and we're at the development stage, and it's got to go to an ethical committee to make sure that and tick all the boxes, if you like. But and in future, I would definitely like to involve this group within that research trial. You're on mute, Nigel.
Sorry, thank you for that, Claire. I forgot to mention that. Excuse my coughing. Over to you, Jenny.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I had a meeting with someone from Natural England the other day. I've passed your email address on, Nigel, but they are the Connecting People with Nature programme, Norfolk-based person. Said something. I wondered if anyone else knows about a UEA lab to do with researching Nature Connection. Don't know if that means anything to anyone.
It doesn't, but I can certainly pursue it with our UEA connections. Do you know anything about that, Tim?
No, you got, excuse me, Nigel, you got links with UEA through your walking side of things. So I think that route is probably the best. I don't have not much to do with UEA these days, but that connection you have with the walking, which I think is a very important issue, and may help the question that's coming from Jenny. I don't know, but I think it would be useful to follow that up. They will think about UEA is that most people know what's going on, despite the fact that you don't get that impression. Most people know what's going on in the area in which they're active. So you should get something from your friends in the walking group. I can't remember her name, but she was very helpful.
We got 2 or 3 ways in, I think. Can you just repeat again what you found out about it, Jenny?
Well, not a huge amount, to be honest, but the person I was talking to was Connecting People with Nature programme bod for Natural England, newly started, just a few weeks into her role. And then there's someone else working locally, kind of looking at Nature Connection. I think they were looking at research projects that they could do through that as well. Kind of one of the questions raised in the meeting was kind of how much Nature Connection is needed for people to care and take action and things like that. So looking at some really interesting stuff, but also I think Natural England possibly may be able to support or may even have funding available. I don't know, but I've passed on your, like I said, passed on your email address.
Thank you.
So I'll see. Should be meeting with her again in a month or two. So
one thing to briefly mention, which I don't know if I did last time, but Garden Organic, who were leading a application to establish a nature research network in Norfolk as part of, again, I think it was a Innovation UK funding programme. Unfortunately, they weren't successful, but they did get a very good score. And basically, we've agreed that as part of the Climate Action Fund, we will continue to try and develop that idea. The idea being that it's community and practice-led research rather than, shall we say, academic-led research. So it's looking at issues that are important to people on the ground, but it's about measuring the impact of something, a new gardening technique, whatever it might be. So we are, and that's the UEA have been involved in as well through Sarah Hanson in the health school and others. So I'll pick up the UEA connection. Thank you for that, Jenny. If there's nothing else, our next meeting, I think I just looked at the moment, we're scheduled for 3 o'clock on the 5th of December. I hope you can make that, and others will. I'll share a brief note of action agreed today, and also a link to the recording of the meeting, so you can reflect back on it. Also the chat as well, so you can pick up any connections in that as well. Other than that, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Claire, if you could just hang on for 5 minutes, we can have a chat about something else. That's all right. See you soon. Bye.
Nigel, can you hold on? And you and
I'm
I.
holding on because I want to have a chat with Claire. But do you want to chat
Are
about
you
something
shutting
else?
off? You've got a time limit, have you?
No, I've just got to have. I'm going to need a word with Claire about something as well. But if you want to hang on to have another chat about something else, that's fine.
Well, I don't want you to mess you around. I'd like to have a chat with you when we have a minute. That's all. Not immediately if it doesn't suit you. We're all leaving.
Could you give me a possible time? And
I'll send
fix something?
you. I'll send you. Yeah,
Lovely.
I'll
Thank
send
you.
Note.
See you all
Yes.
again soon. Thank you very much. Yeah. Hi, Claire.
You're still recording, Nigel.
Oh, my apologies.